This is the saga of the making of a Huey pilot and a captain, and a never to be forgotten day. And I think it's timely that I give this presentation because of the significance of tomorrow and what it should mean to every Australian. Preparatory school was the pilot training course. I joined number 55 pilots training course in June 1964, flying the venerable Windshield, and you'll see this one, if you look carefully, has tufts. This is the prototype 401, and that's probably James Rowland in there, who later became the Chief of the Air Staff. He did a lot of the developmental test flying on the Windshield to cure it of its chronic spinning problems in the early days. After the Windshield, we moved over to Pierce onto the beautiful Vampire, a pretty little ship, and did a wonderful 5 months at Pierce. I wasn't too enamored with the Windshield, that was a brute, but the Vampire, a lady. Beautiful aeroplane. And after 238 hours 45 minutes, I graduated as a pilot officer in the Royal Australian Air Force with those much coveted wings to serve an apprenticeship at number 36 Squadron from October to December. October 65, December 67. I did 1,044 odd hours in the old C-130, and they were the A models, and that was a lot of fun. So much fun that when my girlfriend threatened to come over to see me in Richmond, I had to buy a car. And I'd spent 2 years out on the town, spending money, having fun with the boys, drinking lots of booze. And I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together, well, not that I could find. So I opened my change drawer that I came home every night to the mess and opened the change drawer, and oh golly, it was full of change. I counted out $600. I had enough to buy, well, a decent car with that sort of deposit. Anyway, just over 2 years at number 36 Squadron, and then they saw I was having so much fun that they said, right boy, you're going to 5 Squadron, helicopter operational conversion. So it was under the Huey. It's a UH-1B sitting on the tarmac at RAAF Base Fairburn, where number 5 Squadron was situated, and that's where we did our training out of. RAAF Base Fairburn, for those of you that don't know, is Canberra. Helicopter conversion course, I was on number 5 course, January through to April 68, on the ubiquitous Iroquois, the legendary Huey. 115 flying hours comprising general flying and handling, instrument flying, formation flying, night flying, winching operations, external load operations, confined area and mountain operations, and Army cooperation. Quite a concentrated little course, and then it was on to some exercises to work up. Working up exercises were held in Woodside, just outside of Edinburgh, Adelaide, and then following that to Kaltana for nearly 2 weeks in the field with the grunts. Then another exercise was held up at Docra, which is just outside of Sydney. Another exercise up at Tin Can Bay, just east of the south end of Fraser Island. And Tin Can Bay, a wonderful little slot, I became reacquainted with it when I brought the old boat I brought around a couple of years ago. And they have a wonderful bumper sticker there. A sleepy little fishing village with a sleepy little drinking village with a fishing problem. In fact, things were so slow in Tin Can Bay you could hear the dueling banjos, and they used to say it took 90 minutes to watch 60 minutes. Final exercise was just outside of Singleton, southwest of Newcastle, and at Putty. And then it was off to Nam. I shipped out on the 30th of July 1968 and joined number 9 Squadron Vung Tau, where I remained until the 14th of July 1969, a week before Armstrong walked on the moon. Call sign Albatross, and we got our call sign from the Pusser's duck, the albatross, angry looking albatross head gorged by the astral crown. And that came from the squadron's early associations with the Royal Australian Navy as a fleet cooperation and observation squadron. So into it we went. Our area of operations to refamiliarise you with Vietnam and its geography, there's Phuoc Tuy, South Vietnam, goes right up to the 17th parallel. Saigon, in this area here. So Phuoc Tuy was the gateway to the southeastern entry to Saigon. The 9 Squadron was based at Vung Tau Airfield with one Australian Logistics Support Group here on the peninsula, Capt and Jacques here. This area was very nasty. It was the Mekong Delta, called the Rung Sat Special Zone, and it was a continuous free fire zone. If you saw anything in there, you could shoot it. It was a very, very hot spot for VC activity. That's Gia Dinh province. To the northwest we had Vieux Noir, in which Saigon is located, Long Khan to our north and Binh Tui to our east. The Australian task force was situated at Nui Dat, up along Route 2 from Baria, and of course we had the one Australian Logistics Support Group here. Okay, so very early on I was into action as a co-pilot. Squadron leader Tom Ward took me from my first ride, which was just 3 sorties, familiarisation of the area of operations, and a recon. Then I was thrown into it with Flight Lieutenant Kendall, who was later to win a DFC, for 21 sorties, and some of which were involved with crop spraying. And the Viet Cong didn't like us spraying their crops because it denied them food, so they were usually contested. Next was with Bryn Haylock, who later did a test pilot course, 16 sorties, and that was my first hot long-range reconnaissance extraction. Long-range reconnaissance patrol extraction. The LRRPs were SAS patrols that used to go into the jungle 5 days during the dry season, 10 in the wet, and they just were there to listen and report. They were our eyes. Pretty concentrated. I flew with Flying Officer Kiwi Wells, lovely chap. He too won a DFC, 31 sorties, including one down the mine. Down the mine was where we had to do a towering approach through jungle, and usually it was quite difficult to get in and out with the crewman and the gunner talking us down to keep the rotor and the tail rotor clear. One clip on that and it could be the end of the day. Then they gave me Flight Lieutenant Rexy Budd, dear old Rexy Budd, very senior, and I don't know why they gave him for quite a few sorties, but I flew with him on 5 separate occasions. And then with Tony Hill, RAN, one of the Royal Australian Navy pilots that was with us, lovely bloke, did 32 sorties with a long-range reconnaissance patrol, insertion and extraction, and then on the 23rd, another RAN chap, Sub-Lieutenant Vidal, who is now a priest, with 38 sorties, including a down-the-mine LRRP insert. And so it continued until the captain checkout. On the 29th of October, I was crewed in Albatross 02 with the CO of number 9 Squadron, who was to do my captain checkout. The day did not start well. That morning we had a rocket attack with 122 Mike artillery rockets fired from Long Son Island into the Vung Tau aerodrome. We were attacked by a barrage. Thank you. A barrage of 122 Mike rockets that were fired from Long Son Island. The 122 Mike rocket was the standard artillery round that the Viet Cong used to use because it was highly portable, man carried, man portable, and it packed a hell of a wallop. There's a couple of the 3 guys in a crater from one of these. Okay, so it's the equivalent of a 5-inch shell. Well, this damn rocket whistled in and went carumpa, and of course the CO and I were sitting on opposite sides of the breakfast table. We darted under the table, belting our heads together under the bloody table. Well, a lovely start. He wasn't too pleased with that. Longstone Island was this island here. These rockets had a range of about 13 kilometres, and there's one tower. They used to set them up there and fire them into there. Okay. Highlights of the day. We flew to Nui Dat on standby, and we got our first mission pretty soon after, which was to deliver a chainsaw to the Pioneer Platoon. The Pioneer Platoon was an engineering platoon of sappers, and they were constructing helipads out in the Long Green, which was this area here. The Long Green was always a hot area, and we needed to get more helipads in there so that we could get troops in there to find out what the nasty people were doing. We got over the Long Green, and it was wall-to-wall jungle. And we asked the boys on the ground to pop a smoke. Albatross 02, throw smoke over. Albatross 02, this is Zero Alpha, smoke thrown over. And they'd sit and watch, and through the trees came Zero Alpha, this is Albatross 02, I see purple smoke over. Albatross 02, this is Zero Alpha, purple smoke thrown over. Albatross 02, roger, be with you in 5 minutes. And so we started down to have a look at where we could get down to them in the J, because there was no pad. They were there to build a pad. We managed to find a hole in the jungle fairly close to them, which required a towering approach or a towering descent through the jungle, through 3 layers of jungle. More about that later. And the boss said to me, went on private intercom and said, listen, that's too tight, chuck the bloody thing out. I said, sir, it'll be useless when it hits the ground. We're going to throw it out from about 200 feet up. He said, well, do what you like. You do it your way. I thought, this is bloody wonderful, isn't it? Okay. All right. So when I talked to the lads in the back, I said, can you get us down through that hole? And they said, yeah, we'll give it a go. So, all right, so they talked me down. We managed to drop the chainsaw down. Then they talked me back out, and away we went. A big thundercloud in the other seat. Anyway, we landed back at Nui Dat, and the next sortie was sortie number 21, to deliver a hot box of lunches to the signals at Wakefield Pad. Wakefield Pad was on slope 30 up here, and it was a radio repeater station, so that headquarters back here at Nui Dat could receive tactical radio, which was VHF and only line of sight. It was up on a ridge line. So I went whistling in there and plonked a bird on the pad. Hot boxes got dispatched and lifted off, and the boss goes to private again. Private. You went into that pad far too fast. Slow it down in future. Oh, right, okay. That's going well. Sortie number 30, insert and then extract a SAS long-range reconnaissance patrol. This particular patrol was inserted by a SAS squadron that was almost due to leave Vietnam, and they didn't want to go back out into the J. So anyway, we inserted them, and then we were in the holding pattern, and this was in the Hat Ditch area up in here. More about that later. But we were circling in an area just north of Nui Tai, holding off for the 20 minutes obligatory hold period to let them exfiltrate off the pad, when we hear Albatross, Albatross, this is 1-1, over. Now when they're whispering, they're in contact, and a shiver went down my spine. My God. Anyway, we went in and got them out and took them back to Nui Dat, but there was 5 of them. We put in 4 and now there was 5 of them. They'd captured a prisoner. Anyway, we landed back at Nui Dat and sat on the pad there while they took this prisoner away, all blindfolded. And at about 4:30 in the afternoon we got a message that we had to take this fellow back to his village. He wasn't a prisoner at all. These bloody SAS people had just nabbed him. He was an old woodcutter, and said, right, this is our ticket home, boys. We don't have to stay out in the J. We've been compromised. So now we had to return this so-called prisoner. So we loaded him aboard. He was bundled aboard. He was blindfolded. He was tied up. And I thought, well, you know, this guy's innocent. This is no way to treat this guy. So we got airborne, and just out from Huey, I turned to the boss and I said, I'm going to tell the boys to take the blindfold off this chap. We're well clear of Huey and untie him and try to make friends with him. And the boss said, what do you want to do that for? And I said, well, we're a lone helicopter going into a village, isolated. It's approaching about 5:45 at night, and I think we're going to attract a bit of attention, don't you? He said, look, do it your way if you like, but I'd suggest you just get in there and kick him out and we'll go. I said, sir, please, we're rocking that road ahead and we're down for the night with a lot of angry people around us, and this is up in the Badlands. He said, all right, do it your way. Thank you, sir. And I briefed the boys on the way out from Huey. Whoops, here we go again. From Huey that we're taking this bloke out to a village called Fumai on Route 15. And it's right in the middle of the Badlands. Very isolated. And I instructed the lads in the back, listen fellas, get him untied, take his blindfold off and try to make friends with him, and when we land, one of you escort him from under the rotor disc, shake his hand, so show some form of friendship so we can get the hell out of here, because we've got no support. Anyway, we landed this bloke, and of course we attracted a crowd, landed on the local football field, attracted a crowd. The crewman duly took him out, shook him by the hand, bye-bye, got back in the chopper and away we went. But I started to wonder, what the hell's the boss on about? Is he just trying me out, or is he making it difficult for me, or is he just this way inclined? I came to the conclusion it was the latter. Anyway, total sorties 34, flying time 6 hours 24, and I was anointed a captain. And on it went. Life as a Huey captain. That date there should be the 30th. So 29th of the 10th I do the checkout and I'm in the gun. 30th, 31, 1, 3, 4, 7, 9, and it went on. Day after day after day, sortie after sortie. Until the 8th of February 1969. And I remember this date because it was a Saturday afternoon and we'd just done a job up to Wakefield Pad where we introduced the ridge. And another story about that. The day after I did my captain's checkout, the CO went into Wakefield Pad slow and hit a tree. And of course, me being a typical smart-ass little bog rat, when the boss came into the mess, I said, good evening, sir. I believe you went in slow and hit a tree today. Big mistake. Big mistake.
What's hash and trash?
Hash and trash is carrying ammo, water, food, supplies. Hash and trash. That's what we used to call it. On Saturday the 8th of February 1969 I was commander of Albatross Blue 1, which was leader of the blue section, 2 sections of 4 helicopters, red section, blue section. I was leader of blue section, and after the combat assault had finished I was reverted to the call sign Albatross 04. 41 sorties, 8 hours 30. We did a lot of hash and trash, carrying bits and pieces, and then came a hot dust off winch. Crew, myself, Pilot Officer Ono Dalmolan, crewman Sergeant Jock York, and gunner Alan Brazil. The aircraft was the UH-1H, builder's number 9380. It's the 9380th off the production line, bit more modern than yours, Robin, number 7. And her number was 82380. There she is going into a pad in South Vietnam. We were caught up in the Battle of Hat Ditch. The Battle of Hat Ditch was waged in the Hat Ditch area from the 3rd of December to the 19th of February, 68-69. It was aimed at rooting out heavily entrenched Viet Cong and NVA units that had infiltrated in from here and across the top there. They were massing for the Tet Offensive on Saigon, 1969. We just finished our job delivering whatever we were delivering to Slope 30, the helipad on the ridge line, and we got a call from ATOL, which is the Air Transport Operations Centre, call sign ATOL. Is there any helicopter in Phuoc Tuy province equipped with a winch? And we had a winch. And we called back and said, yes, we're winch equipped. He said, right, stand by to copy, ready to copy sitrep over. I said, go ahead. I said, Roger, we have had a dust-off helicopter shot down. It is an immediate dust-off required at grid reference 262907. So we took down the details, and what had happened was a US Army UH-1D aeromedical evacuation helicopter had been shot down while in a winch to pick up one of our wounded. In fact, they just pulled the wounded in his Stokes litter off the ground when they were hit, and they had to cable cut him, so he with a jolt back on the ground. They escaped to crash land 5 miles away. This is a typical US Army dust-off helicopter emblazoned with the Red Cross. No armament, just the winch arm poking out the side, because they couldn't carry arms because they were displaying the Red Cross. Hat Ditch was north of the Nui Tai up in this area here. That's just a general map shot of it. And here was the area which we were asked to go into, grid reference 262907. This was part of Operation Goodwood, which 9 Royal Australian Regiment was involved in on the 1st to the 16th of February 1969. It was their first major operation since arriving in country. The general area of operations for 9 RAAF were to pursue along this blue line with company patrols seeking out to destroy the enemy and their bunker systems. The vivid recollection of that afternoon is in the introductory part was I was coming back out of the pad at Wakefield, flying back to Nui Dat without a care in the world. It was a lovely afternoon, balmy, dry season, beautiful. And I was thinking what the boys were doing back in Sydney, probably in the pub, having a few beers, and then all of a sudden we got this damn call. Anyway, proceed to grid reference 262907, which is here. D Company 9 RAAF had run into a bunker system and been ambushed. Bunkers were like honeycomb, rabbit warrens, all throughout this area, and this is what they looked like. This is a bunker in the Hat Ditch area. See one of our diggers ready to punch a hole in anything that pops out. And what had happened was the radio operator of the patrol, or the platoon, had been hit in the back by a rocket-propelled grenade, which is an anti-tank weapon. There is the nasty little missile. And here's a picture of a radio man with his PRC 25 on his back, and the point man calling his patrol leader back with some observation. But the radio man typically had this PRC 25 on his back. It was a backpack. And there's a picture of the radio set. Not too much to keep you from harm when you're hit by an anti-tank grenade. The jungle. It was tertiary, secondary and primary. Tertiary, secondary and primary. The crowns of the tops over 200 feet. while we were en route to this grid reference, I was thinking, well, the last bloke that was there got shot down. What am I going to do to avoid it? And I determined that our best chance was to be able to hover in the crown of a tree and hope that it would enable the cable to penetrate down to the ground. We did not have a jungle penetrator, I wish we did. But there was 200 feet for that cable to drop, and it could have got caught up anywhere, which meant time. Anyway, going into it, I managed to find the nice crown of a tree that was close to the smoke that they'd popped, and settled the helicopter into it. And I was hovering with my reference. Hover reference was a branch just about there. A branch about yay thick. The helicopter rotor was whirring around above it all. So I was nicely settled in the top of this tree, which gave us plenty of cover, well, I thought, from the tertiary and the secondary, and then this crown of the tree. Here we're getting close. This is not the actual day. I was a bit busy to take photos that day. And this is where the diggers were. That's what it's like down the bottom there. A Huey in the winching position. See the winch operator here, the winch arm out the side, and the cable there. And this bloke's sitting on what they call a jungle penetrator. Here's a jungle penetrator. The arms fold up so it penetrates the jungle, and then the man can sit on it and be winched up. The trouble is this bloke had taken a grenade in the back. He was no sitting patient, he was a lying patient. So we needed a Stokes litter. And thankfully the Americans provided with that when they cable cut and flew off. So this is the Stokes litter, and this is how he came up. This is how we brought him up. Through the primary, secondary and tertiary jungle levels. 200 feet, we're about just a shade under 10 minutes in the hover, I think. Now while we're pulling this chap up, all hell is breaking loose on the ground. I was actually screaming over the radio to make myself heard. I had Rocky Dalmolan, my co-pilot, on the controls with me just in case one of us took it. The sound, the noise was just terrific. Because the boys down on the ground were putting down very heavy covering fire so that they would protect us. The boys weren't going to move with this chap in the condition he was in. And what the Viet Cong tend to do in those circumstances, they know that we will bring in artillery, either airborne by fighters or Royal Australian Artillery 105mm cannon or 155mm cannon. So the Viet Cong tend to hug, and the jungle is so thick that they can hug to within 20 metres and you won't see them. And that's too close to put in any artillery fire. So the boys were keeping their heads down so they wouldn't ping us. It's the longest 10 or so minutes I've ever spent in my life. And I know what fear is like. The taste of it is terrible. Anyway, we managed to get this fellow up to the skids and onto the helicopter cargo floor. And Jock York said, "Sir, he's dead." And I was pulling out, and we were going to 1 ALSG, Australian Logistics Support Group, here to 1 Australian Field Hospital. And I said, "I don't care what you do, Jock, just get him," he had vital signs when he left the ground, "get him going again." And the 2 boys in the back, to their credit, actually got him going again, got vital signs by the time we got to Vampire Pad. Meanwhile, Rocky and I had this old 380 wound up to about 137 knots, and we were just approaching retreating blade stall. She was nibbling. The red line speed of a Huey is 124. Any faster and you start to run into a problem called retreating blade stall. Helicopters are like that. The faster you go, the more trouble you get into. So we had this old girl wound up to make our way back from a position up here to ALSG. By this time we'd adopted the dust off call sign, and they gave us priority through the control traffic area into the Bung Tau aerodrome control zone. There's a shot of the Australian Logistics Support Group at Bung Tau, and as it so happens, there's Longson Island from where we got the rocket attack during that fateful breakfast before my captain checkout. The Nui Dins in the background. And here is #1 Australian Field Hospital with Vampire Pad. Vampire Pad. Only doctors could be that cynical. Okay, the Australian Field Hospital displaying its Red Cross. And Vampire Pad where we landed and shut down, and the team was ready there to take our casualty straight into the hospital. We went back to Fire Support Base Susan and shut down because we were told to, in case there was any more to do, but soon after they said, no, you can go back to Kangaroo Pad. Kangaroo Pad is this pad here, just south of Luscombe Field, with Nui Dat, named after Hill Nui Dat, and the Australian Task Force surrounding it. And we sat there on standby, wondering what nasty surprises they had for us next. Well, as luck would have it, they had none. They said we could go home. While we were at Vampire Pad, we shut down to have a look at the helicopter because we were sure we'd taken rounds. And we searched high and low and we couldn't find a mark. I could hear them going by the window, and it's a horrible sound. Couldn't find a thing, so we started up and went back on standby. Well, I was in the bar that night having several cold ales to soothe the nerves, and the squadron engineering officer came up and said, "Noddy, you want to jump in my jeep? We'll go down and have a look at the helicopter you brought in." I said, "Oh, all right." It was Ron Tucker, squadron leader, lovely bloke. Anyway, down we went to the hangar. He said, "Have a look at that." And we'd scored a hit right in there, right in the blade group. And he said, "Thank God you didn't do too much more flying, mate." I said, "Why?" He said, "If we examine that, it's probably starting to crack already. You would have lost a blade." Now, when a helicopter's operating, there is 800 tons of tension across the rotor head. That's what keeps the blades flat. Okay? So we were bloody lucky. The outcome. The next day, on the 9th of February, I and my crew were most saddened to hear that just after 3 a.m. that morning, our casualty, Lance Corporal Malcolm McConaughey, 120-1200, had succumbed to his massive injuries. Rest in peace, Malcolm. We did our best. I'd like you now to join me in 1 minute's silence in memory of Malcolm and all his comrades and all those others that have died trying to give you the lifestyle you enjoy here right now. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Lest we forget. Epilogue. The crew of A2380 involved in the action of the 8th of February 1969 were decorated. Flying Officer W. Parsons, and NFD, no flaming decoration. Pilot Officer Ron O'Dell-Molan, mentioned in dispatches. Sergeant Jock York, Distinguished Flying Medal. LAC Alan Brazil, mentioned in dispatches. And the lesson?
I was in the command post at Huey at the 1st Armoured Regiment on the days, in the day of Hatdick and the battle. The battle actually involved not only infantry, it involved the Centurion tanks of the Armoured Regiment. And on that day, there were 3 tanks that went forward to lead the infantry in. And the first tank was hit on 3 sides by an RPG, It blew the head off the driver, but he's still alive. It blew his skull off. The round actually from the RPG penetrated the front of the tank and went through and splashed metal everywhere. It blew the legs off the crew commander. The gunner loader went over the side and was machine gunned in the legs, and the gunner got out, with shrapnel just in his backside. The crew commander has since died of his wounds, and the rest of the crew are still alive, and I meet with them every Anzac Day when we march, sort of in the city. One of the actions at that particular time involved a troop leader, a Lieutenant Brian Sullivan, who at that time, when that tank got hit, jumped out of his tank, ran across the battlefield while the action was still going, hauled everybody back behind the tank. The medics went forward and took everybody away. He reversed the tank out of the battlefield, then ran back to his tank, and then attacked, sort of the rest of the bunker system. He got a military cross for that, and it was his second military cross. And Brian Sullivan went on to actually fly helicopters, would you believe, for Army aviation. It's such a significant thing, but the most important thing that we felt all the time when we were out there, and we were out there a lot, was to know that there were guys like you who could actually, come to, and help, and you did, and I thank you for it.
Thank you, Glenn. It takes you into the reality, doesn't it, eh?